Welcome everybody. My name is Allana Goldsworthy and I have the honour of being the MC tonight and chief herder of cats and making sure that everybody speaks to their particular time. Philippa's got a very well thought out and comprehensive timetable for me to follow, so I hope I don't let her down. Firstly, of course, the Geelong Regional Library Corporation acknowledges the Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar original owners of the lands on which their library services operate. They pay respect to Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar elders past, present and emerging. They acknowledge and celebrate the First Nations peoples of this land as the custodians of learning, literacy, knowledge and story. Now, a couple of housekeeping announcements. I've got my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I just remind people that I've discovered to my alarm one day, so for those of you who don't know, I work in the family court system as a barrister, and phones going off in courts is not well received, so I've always been very, very conscious of making sure that my phone is off. However, one day I had a new phone, and this sneaky little phone, which has got this Google person listening to you, heard somebody in the courtroom, and it might have been me, ask a question of the judge, and from my bag a voice was answering. And fortunately I know the judge pretty well and she didn't throw me out of court. So just a couple of little points before we move into the program proper. And firstly, isn't it wonderful to be here in this environment, a fabulous environment for Geelong and for people to use, and how wonderful we can be here in person. The last time I was involved in a session such as this, we were all Zooming and wondering if we were on mute and if our hair was right. So it's lovely just to be feeling normal in this environment. There is a photographer here tonight. You will have seen signs about it and you will have seen some clicking going on. If you're not happy to be photographed, please let the photographer know. Ben Cook, thank you Ben for your efforts this evening, and I hope that you've got that thing that blurs my face. So this evening the format will be that we're going to have a panel of fabulous speakers. I did a little bit of reading about them before coming in this evening, and I think we're very, very fortunate to have them, and I think it's going to be a great night. They're going to have 10 minutes each to tell you their personal stories. And after they've all spoken, then we're going to be able to grill them with some questions. And I'm sure that as you are thinking, as you hear each speaker, you'll think of some questions. Make sure you don't forget them, because you'll have, after they all finish, that's when we're going to have our little Q&A session. Now, you will have seen that there's a raffle prize, a lava raffle. I haven't got my ticket yet, but I promise I will. We're going to have another little break later on where you can buy some tickets. That's a gift basket which has very kindly been donated by the Community Care Chemist of Geelong West, together with a thermal styling brush, and I know a lot of the gentlemen here would be interested in that, donated by West Coast Hair and Beauty Supply, so thank you to those very generous donors. So we'll have another chance to buy those tickets, because I'm not going to miss out. If during the course of this evening I mistakenly, refer to people as Your Honour, you'll understand that I was in court earlier today, and you tend to adopt the terminology of the night, but here that's not going to be necessary. And I'd first of all like to introduce Philippa Chalice, OAM. I've known Philippa for a very long time, and I'd describe Philippa as being Geelong through and through. Not so sure about the footy affiliations, but in terms of her dedication and devotion to the people of Geelong, her actions speak for themselves. She is a survivor of uterine cancer, I think 2017, and that led her to form the Geelong Region Cancerians. particularly to raise awareness of uterine cancer, but also with the view to support, educate and fundraise more generally. And the Geelong Region Cancerians are affiliated with the Australian Cancer Research Foundation. One thing I will say is that cancer doesn't discriminate, does it? It affects everybody. Young, old, male, female, no thought of sexual orientation, politics, nothing. It doesn't discriminate. So therefore, we're all here with good reason, and I'm very grateful that Philippa has asked me to be a part of this evening, and I invite her to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Allana. It's indeed a privilege to be able to welcome you all to this wonderful Geelong Library and Heritage Centre. The Geelong Region Cancerians are delighted and extremely appreciative that the Geelong Library has partnered with us again to present a health panel discussion for the third year in a row. A special welcome to Pam Newton, Director of Community Experience at the Geelong Regional Libraries. Would you please say hi to everyone for us? Pam, please pass on again our gratitude for the support extended by the library's professional staff during the first panel discussion, which was face-to-face, and last year conducted via Zoom, a last-minute decision caused by COVID constraints. I would like to welcome and say how pleased we are to have with us Helene Bender, AM, inaugural Chair of the Geelong Region Cancerians Committee. And if anyone doesn't know Helene, please make yourself known. Anna Negro and Bernadette Uzelak, both of whom have been Geelong Region Cancerians champions since our formation. And Victoria Bonzi. Victoria is the Philanthropy and Engagement Manager of the Australian Cancer Research Foundation. At this point, I'd like to also acknowledge Geelong Region Cancerians Committee member Maureen O'Keefe, a uterine cancer survivor, for helping to bring this event together. Maureen recognises the importance of the general public having the opportunity to be informed about the areas which will be covered during our panel discussion. It also gives me pleasure to acknowledge the Lions Club of Geelong Breakfast for their support in printing of the uterine cancer pamphlets being distributed tonight for the very first time. The pamphlet you found on your seat has been printed with the sole purpose to achieve the #1 goal of the Geelong Region Cancerians, to raise awareness about uterine cancer. The flyers are being distributed to doctors' rooms, medical centres and reception areas of other modalities like physiotherapists and wellbeing centres, and so on. The information on the flyer could well be a lifeline for women who have symptoms but don't recognise them. Please feel free to take a bundle if you're in a position to pass them on and raise awareness about uterine cancer. In saying before that it was a privilege to welcome you, it's more than that. I'm a very fortunate woman to be here. Fortunate by way of becoming a cancer survivor and not having chemotherapy or radiotherapy. To all of those of you in the room who are cancer survivors, congratulations. You all deserve a round of applause, and would you please acknowledge if you are one, and let's say so. Some of my fortune came about because I took immediate action once diagnosed. Fortunate because of the wonderful, dedicated medical people who all collaborated to return me to good health. The Geelong Region Cancerians, together with the Geelong Regional Libraries, know that the panel discussion and the depth of knowledge of our panellists this evening will give you someone you know the chance, will give you or someone you know the chance to be just so fortunate. After this event concludes, please take the information you've heard during the Cancer Beyond the Diagnosis conversation and pass it on, as it could save someone's life. On behalf of the hard-working small committee of the Geelong Region Cancerians, once again, welcome.
Thank Thank you, Philippa. I almost called you Your Honour. It's my privilege to welcome our first panellist member, Sue Bowles. Sue has been working as a McGrath breast care nurse for 13 years at the Andrew Love Centre. Her role is to support women and men dealing with a breast cancer diagnosis from when they're first referred to the University Hospital Geelong through their treatment pathway and beyond. Sue is a key part of the Strive to Thrive 12-week locally developed Geelong program-based physical rehabilitation and wellbeing program for cancer patients recovering from treatment, which ran for 10 years. And I think I even heard today on the radio the importance of physical rehabilitation and exercise for those who have undergone cancer treatment. In the last year, Sue and her colleagues have supported nearly 300 men and women dealing with a new breast cancer diagnosis. So I'd invite her to make her way very carefully up these steps and take over the podium. Thanks, Sue.
So I'd just like to say thank you to Philippa and the Geelong Cancerians for asking me to come and speak tonight. And as Allana said, I'm one of the McGrath breast care nurses at the Andrew Love Cancer Centre, part of Barwon Health, and I've been in the role 13 years. Been at the hospital, I don't know if I should say, but 37 years. So, and I didn't train there, so I won't go into any more years because it's adding up to a lot. So my role is funded by the McGrath Foundation, who you might well have heard about over the years, a foundation started by Glenn and Jay McGrath to fund breast care nurses to support, especially they were thinking about women, but we do have men as well dealing with a breast cancer diagnosis. And my job is to support patients from when they're first diagnosed through their treatment pathway as they're going through University Hospital Geelong and the Andrew Love Cancer Centre. As time has gone on and through the success of the model with the breast care nurse role, we now have at the Andrew Love Cancer Centre a number of cancer nurse coordinators covering upper gastrointestinal cancers, colorectal cancers, melanoma, lung, brain, prostate, and the haematological cancers. So it's an exciting time that nursing has progressed to this, that we've actually got not all the cancers and not gynecological cancers as yet supported in Geelong, but we do have nurse coordinators for a majority of cancers. At the Andrew Love Cancer Centre, it's a comprehensive integrated service providing specialised medical, haematological and radiation oncology services in Geelong. And we're very proud of the Andrew Love Centre. We celebrated our 30 years this year, and it's we're serving not just the Geelong area but the whole Barwon Southwest, and it's really strives to be a place of excellence to support our patients. But cancer diagnosis is hard. We know it can change life, and the importance of being able to guide and support our patients through their diagnosis and treatment is paramount. Many patients, I'm trying to move away so I'm not making that noise. Many patients tell us that they hear nothing from the doctor once they hear that word cancer mentioned. Anything else they've missed. And so by the time they come to see us at the hospital, often they're first meeting the surgeon or the oncologist, it's a time of extreme anxiety and concern. It's certainly normal to have a degree of shock at the diagnosis, and it can be terrifying. Depending on the type of cancer, some people will have no symptoms leading to the diagnosis. Many diagnoses are found through screening, like breast screen or bowel scan, and it can be hard accepting that they have cancer when they're feeling well and no actual signs. I've nursed, in my previous time of nursing on surgical wards, often patients with bowel and gastrointestinal cancers had been unwell for a long time before they'd been given their diagnosis, and they go, oh, that's why I've been unwell, or why I'd lost weight. But a lot of my patients that I see who've come through breast screen, they can't feel anything, it's very early, and they've been told that it can be sometimes quite an aggressive quick-growing cancer that's been found and they need an enormous amount of treatment when they're feeling well. It takes a long time to accept that. Not that I'm going to speak just about breast cancer tonight, but breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer for women in Australia. The numbers are now 1 in 7 women will be diagnosed during their lifetime. More than 20,000 women in Australia and just over 200 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer this year in Australia. So after receiving a cancer diagnosis, the questions start, the concern about what happens next. Who do I need to see? How long do I need to wait for an appointment? Waiting, a week sometimes can seem like a month. What treatment will I need? How will this impact my life, my family? Can I keep working? What time do I need off work? What will my life look like after treatment? So it's about being able to work through those questions and give the answers to assist patients as well as we can from that start. So getting some control amongst the chaos of a cancer diagnosis. Personally, I find it very rewarding to be able to educate and provide clinical and emotional support to patients and their families from diagnosis through surgery, oncology treatments and beyond. When I first meet a patient, they're usually anxious and understandably worried. My job is to work through this, the diagnosis, the treatment plan with them, break down the medical jargon and reassure them that they're not alone in this experience. With advances in cancer treatments, especially over recent decades, many people are living well after completion of their cancer treatment, but we're also seeing an increasing number of people living well with more advanced cancer, and that's especially so in breast cancer. So what does happen after this cancer diagnosis? We are fortunate in Geelong. We have a whole range of medical specialists, surgeons and oncologists, and they're specialists in their particular tumour streams, not just cancer, but whether it's breast, lung, bowel cancer. And use the latest scientific evidence-based cancer care in both our public and private systems. On diagnosis, your GP will refer you to the relevant specialist, surgeon or oncologist or haematologist, depending on the cancer type. That appointment hopefully will help demystify the future and the treatment plan. Often though, it may involve being sent for further specialist scans to gain more information, which can be anxiety causing as well. But it's about, as I often say to the patients, is we're getting all the pieces of the puzzle, putting it together, and then we can go forward with the specific tailored treatment plan. Patient cases are discussed in multidisciplinary meetings. We have meetings every day of the week that for the different tumour streams and the specific specialists involved in that. So these meetings involve all the relevant medical, surgical, allied health team, nursing specialists, and we're all involved in the team meeting to get a coordinated treatment plan for the patient. This plan is patient-centric and it's then presented to the patient and they're involved in their final treatment plan. Treatment lengths and types of treatment, whether it's a long, surgery and then long course chemotherapy and radiotherapy and treatments after, or if sometimes it can be quite a short, it might be surgery only, as Philippa was saying. So it depends on the different type of cancer, the tumour stream, and then within that tumour stream there's different types, so treatment is different. I've often had patients say, oh, but so-and-so, my cousin or my aunt or my sister or so had chemotherapy, why aren't I having chemotherapy? But for their particular cancer, chemotherapy might not be helpful. We have other treatments. And that's just within breast cancer. There's a whole range of treatments. So all of that is discussed at those early appointments. So what is available at the Andrew Love Cancer Centre in Geelong? Well, as I said earlier, it services the whole Barwon of Southwest region, though we have smaller cancer centres at Colac and Warrnambool, and a smaller one again, or some services at Portland, but we're still sort of the main centre for them, and patients do come up to us if they're needing further treatment or more specialised than that can be offered in the regions. And we treat over 20,000 patients each year at the Andrew Love Cancer Centre, which I always find an astounding number to think of the amount of patients who come through our doors. So at the Cancer Centre, we have our medical and radiation oncology specialists, we have our cancer nurse coordinators, we have our oncology day ward. We also have a specialist inpatient cancer services ward, Baxter 6, in the main hospital in the new wing. We have a relatively new clinic that started the last couple of years, the CNAC clinic. Anyone who's come through oncology day ward would have been given the instructions for the information for the CNAC clinic. It's a clinical nurse assessment clinic as part of day ward. We give the patients numbers they can ring 24 hours a day, so Monday to Friday, office hours, and then numbers for the Baxter 6 oncology ward, after hours, weekends, public holidays. So if patients undergoing treatment are unwell, there is always someone that they can ring for assistance before they need, quite often they might need to come in through emergency if they're unwell, but they've got someone that they can ring and not be worrying all night. Do I need to worry about this? I've got a temperature. Do I need to come in? Different things. We have a specialist oncology pharmacy. We have oncology psychiatric doctors, plus we have our oncology psychology team. We have specialist clinical trials, and we also have contact with trials, because clinical trials can be run at different hospitals. We will have some at the Andrew Love Cancer Centre, but there's also connections with Peter McCullen and Monash with their cancer services as well, if a specific cancer trial that could be relevant to a patient isn't offered at Geelong. We have oncology social workers, a specialist lymphedema clinic. We have our Andrew Love Wellness Centre, which has been unfortunately closed during COVID but is up running now, where it's a very comfortable area for patients to go to seek a quiet place pre or post-treatment with their family. There's also cancer resources, a wig library, yoga sessions, and the psychologists run group sessions on brain fog, anxiety and fear of recurrence, and a sleep group program as well. So we're gradually getting back to pre-COVID times. Unfortunately, our support groups aren't yet able to return to the Wellness Centre, but hopefully in time. We can refer to our patients to the oncology rehabilitation groups. And as was mentioned earlier, I was part of the Strive to Thrive team. Dr. Karen White, Barbara Cummings from St John of God, and myself started it back in 2010, and we ran for 10 years, but COVID was the end of us. We used to fundraise and run this 12-week program which was very important, with physical rehabilitation and getting patients fitter, and doing well after chemotherapies and long treatments. But luckily, in between then, each of the hospitals in Geelong have now got their own oncology rehabilitation services available, and we know that through studies that regular exercise of 30 minutes a day can reduce risk of cancer recurrence. So we really do advocate for patients to keep exercise going during their chemotherapy to keep up muscle strength and reduce fatigue, but especially afterwards. And I was just, I'm not sure how the time... I'll give one thing, just from today's Geelong Advertiser. I don't know how many people actually read it, but or get it delivered, well, we do still, but there was a very exciting article in it talking about breast cancer breakthrough and exercise being the key, and a study that was done in Melbourne, actually with a specialised exercise program during chemotherapy, and great results for the patients with cardiac fitness improving during chemotherapy instead of reducing, which is quite often what happens with breast cancer chemotherapy. So it was just getting the word out there that definitely regular exercise for patients going through chemotherapy and following, how important it is to keep patients well and on the road to recovery. So thank you for listening tonight, and thanks, Philippa. Thank you, Allana.
Thank you, Sue. That was great. Obviously a very rewarding role for you, and as I've mentioned before, and this is not all about me, but I practice in family law, and I see families tearing themselves to bits, and I think if they just stood back and just thought about what life is and what life can be, there might be very different outcomes. But wonderful to hear the work that you're doing, and as I say, it must be an incredibly rewarding, although often challenging role. So thank you for your presentation this evening. It's been great. Next victim, no, sorry, sorry. Jules Haddock. Just as a brief introduction for Jules, she's a mental health educator, and the times we live in at the moment, these people are under the pump, and imagine particularly in the area that Jules works, this would be an incredibly busy time. As a principal master mental health first aid instructor and accomplished conversationalist in mental health education with GNU training, Jules has an engaging and creative approach in helping communities understand mental illness and how to manage the invisible blocks and walls often confronted in this thing called life. Jules understands the importance of peer support and the power in sharing our normal mental health battles. Jules will talk about the importance of managing your mental health post-diagnosis and provide a few techniques that will help along the way. So I'd invite Jules to make her way up and join us here. And I thought she was going to climb right up. Jeez. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you very much for that great introduction of being a principal master. I was born in the era, when you watch the kung fu movies and, master. I feel like you should all be going, hello, master. Just to add to that, I also have my own business called The Anxious Bird. I've sort of slowed down a little bit on that. And that really started because our youngest son was diagnosed with autism, and my background was actually helping people with autism. So I naturally fell into sort of training teachers through primary, secondary. But I've just come off the back of running the Art of the Minds Festival in lovely Torquay, which is a festival we run every year. It's a non-profit charity to raise awareness about mental health. So please have a look at our website, and you might want to venture and come to some of our activities next year. Well, thank you very much, Maureen. That was your the invitation to come and speak tonight. And I guess I can't call myself a survivor of cancer, but I definitely, sat bedside as I watched my father and my dear Nana that literally died, as I was holding their hand. So I do understand, the impacts and the ripple effects. And I think what I kind of want to talk about tonight is a little bit about the importance of not only a person managing their mental health and well-being, but also for those around them, because we do need each other, and we know it's like a ripple effect when trauma hits us. But I guess the first thing I want to say, if you haven't heard this before, it's okay to not be okay. Life isn't, you wake up every day and look out there and go, oh, well, maybe not out there because that looks a bit too nice. Let's look that way, where we don't see Bambi and rainbows. It is really normal for us to have, trials. But I guess when it comes to grief, we particularly see certain types of mental illnesses that can raise their head, and that might be grief because of a diagnosis, or grief because of loss of not working at the moment, or feeling that you can't do other things that you ordinarily would have done at that particular time. But I'm going to take us back quickly to what is a mental illness, because my focus is really about building people's literacy. Now, if you went home or you were cooking before you came here and you cut your finger with a knife, I would guarantee you could all not only describe with language exactly what had happened, but you'd assess it, and you'd also decide whether you needed professional help. Now, if I said to you, tell me the 9 symptoms of depression, tell me all the different types of anxiety, explain to me what is post-traumatic stress, most people stumble. And what we're really talking about is comorbidity. It's very normal to have a physical illness, and then what comes as the surprise package is a mental illness. In actual fact, 1 out of 5 of you in this room this year will, if you haven't already, experienced an episode of mental illness. And many people don't know that because they don't know the symptoms. They might just say, I'm stressed or I'm a bit burnt out. But in actual fact, we know from very good Australian data that 1 out of 5 of us meet the criteria for a diagnosed illness. So what is a mental illness? Well, it's a diagnosable, treatable illness, and it's treated under a recovery model. And there's 2 parts. So over here we have the GPs and the psychologists and the psychiatrists and medication, etc. But on this side, I'm going to be talking to you also about what we call the non-clinical side of recovery and what keeps us well. Now, yes, this is my job and I've done lots of professional development to get here, but I guess the driver of why I'm here is I'm a person with lived experience of mental illnesses. Yes, surprise, surprise, I've had more than one episode. Now, as a young person, I had an eating disorder. As a young mum, I had postnatal depression. But what was on my back the whole time that I didn't even know was there, but boy, did I feel the weight and confusion of it, was post-traumatic stress disorder. And many of you might go, well, did she go to the Vietnam War? In actual fact, post-traumatic stress disorder is more prevalent with women, but it is very prevalent when we've been exposed to anything that rattles our sense of safety. Now, the old diagnosis of post-traumatic stress used to be that our life was threatened in some way, or, like in my case, I was sexually violated as a young child, and I hid that for many years. But the new diagnosis says it's not so much about telling people what traumatises them, it's about their reaction to them. And I guess, in saying that, we have to understand that anxiety is normal. The fight-flight response keeps us alive. But I guess if we understand the brain more, we can learn to understand how we can be more susceptible to experiencing mental illness. So I will touch on post-traumatic stress at the end if I have a bit more time so you can understand that. And believe it or not, it all has to do with that moment when you're sleeping and your eyes are going like this, the REM sleep. But let's now just think about your brain. So I think everyone in the room has a brain, correct? Except if you're a Collingwood supporter, maybe. I can say that because my husband's a Collingwood supporter, so yeah. All right, now we know that we think. We think. Now we also know that we feel. We feel emotions, we feel sadness, happiness, fear, joy, a whole range of emotions. And we also know that we behave in certain ways. We can be irritable, we can be withdrawn, we can be joyous, we can be cranky. Now, out of those 3, we've got thoughts, emotions, and behaviour. The question I want you to think about is which one comes first? Now, the answer is 97% of everything you have done today and you will continue to do for the rest of the night starts with a thought. That thought fires an emotional response which sees a behavioural outcome. So if you like, your head is like the sky and you have all these thoughts floating through, and just like the real sky, we don't see all of the thoughts. We don't, oh, there they are and they're gone, the cloud's gone. But then comes the big rain cloud we hear the thunder, and we might have an emotional response like, oh, damn, there goes the picnic outside, and it changes our behaviour. Now, the interesting thing, I guess, about thoughts is how many do you think goes through your head in one day? How many thoughts? Take a guess. Try the average brain has 60,000 thoughts that go through it every day, and they've measured up to 80,000 thoughts. Now, thoughts are real, but thoughts are not always based on fact. Now, another analogy to think about when it comes to mental illness is that our heads are like a train station, and in one day we have 60,000 express trains. You know, some of them just in, they're out, in, out. Like some of you might be going, oh, I'm hungry, haven't had my dinner yet. Is there any food here? You know, the thought comes, goes. Sorry, that was my inner monologue then. And probably my belly googling as well. But I guess, you know, we think about that train station, and in comes some trains, like it might be, oh, look at the clock, we have to get to the event at the library tonight. We have an emotional response to that, and then we act on it, train's gone. But what we know when we start to get challenged with a diagnosis, if you like, that can lead to mental illness is our thoughts change. And I like to call them the puffing billies come in, and they're the big black steam engines. Now, these carriages have the potential to fill themselves with toxic, negative thoughts that will in turn drive toxic, fearful emotions, which will in turn see negative behaviours that we don't want to have, which affect our quality of functioning. So I guess understanding what our brain does gives us the first tip on how to manage our mental well-being. Now, Albert Ellis, who died many years ago, did a lot of study around thinking. And one of the things he discovered is we ruminate. And that is actually from the Latin word meaning chewing cud. You know how a cow, you know, keeps chewing. So I don't know about you, but I've had those nights where 3 o'clock in the morning, one thought just keeps going around and around. Now, another thing that he discovered that we do is we catastrophize. And there's two parts to catastrophizing thinking. One is we overestimate the odds of the absolute worst outcome, whilst we underestimate our ability to actually manage that situation. So you don't have to be Einstein to realise that if we change our thoughts, bring in more positive thoughts, we'll bring in more positive emotions, and in turn we will see more positive behaviour and functioning. But I guess the thing is that we can't always do that by ourselves. Now, have any of you, just hands up if you've ever been to a gym or had a coach in a sporting setting? Yep, great. Even if you haven't, you know in a gym there's personal trainers. And people hand over squillions of dollars to personal trainers to manage their bodies. But we know that 97% of everything we do as a human being starts in our head, our responses. So the personal trainers we should never feel ashamed about accessing are psychologists, counsellors, spiritual guides, if that's, you know, what you utilise, but people that are trained to help us identify are our negative, sometimes catastrophizing, ruminating thoughts affecting what we want to and how we want to function. Because the reality is we will never change the world, or often we can never change our experiences, but we can change our attitude to those experiences. Does that make sense? Now, I guess there's a few tips I've written down here. It took me a very, very long time to figure out my journey of recovery, and boy did I fall over and smash my face many times. And look, I would be first to say I am not immune to experiencing mental illness. You know, last year a friend of mine took his life. That hit me hard, really hard. And I had elevated anxiety. But the difference is I've created what I call my recovery wheel. So I knew exactly what I had to do to get myself back to sleep, because that was my symptom, waking up, thinking. So what I would first of all give you a tip is to give yourself time. Your brain can be rewired. It is not wired to always have an anxious, fearful response. And I think monks are an example of that. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a stressed monk. Although I always think that would be a fantastic YouTube film, The Stress Monk. The other thing is allow for a range of emotions. No emotion is wrong. Every emotion at any single time is right. One of the things they've proven is that if we talk to people, what it does is it helps us when we share our emotions and feelings and finding someone safe to talk to. It helps us objectify ourselves from our thoughts and our emotions, because we are not our thoughts and emotions. They are simply experiences that we have. And remember, thoughts are not always based on fact. Yet we can start to believe the facts or think that they're facts. But if you feel uncomfortable talking to people, there's adamant research to say, get out a pen and paper and write it down. So if you can't sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, write it. Now, there's even some really good apps you can get on your phones called Worry Time, where you can type in worries and you can program yourself to worry at particular times of the day. How exciting is that? But they've actually shown with research that it really helps shift the weight away from us. It helps us manage, the mental challenges that come our way. I think one of the other things, if you are supporting someone going through any journey, is don't be quick to problem solve. Just sit in the space with them. Validate. Now, validation we do at funerals beautifully, because we don't arrive at a funeral and say, right, I'm here and I will fix it, but we stand with the person within their pain and recognise their pain, and that is so powerful to do that from one human being to another. I think also accept silence. It's okay to not know what to say and to just sit in silence with people. Now, I'm going to get you to do an exercise now, because one of the things that we tend to do as human beings is we become quite self-critical. And this comes from Paul Gilbert. He was actually the founder of self-compassion therapy, which really means treating yourself as your best friend. So what I want you to think about now is a moment that's been really terrible for you, and it could be now. And if it is, that's okay, because that's life. Okay, and I want you to give it a word. So it might be, this hurts. This is painful. So I'm talking about your emotions now. This hurts, it's painful. Some of you might have a swear word you throw in there. That's step number 1. So what you're doing right now is you are doing a weight lift for your brain. Step number 2, remind yourself and say to yourself, the pain I am feeling right now is shared by all of humanity. So there's people like me right across Australia, right across the world, sharing this same pain. I'm not alone. Step number 3, this is where you develop your slogan as though you were your best friend. Now, I recently had, or not actually that recently, that's not quite true, had one of the episodes with one of the kids, and I was really self-critical about, myself as a mother. And I remember saying to myself, this really hurts. And then I reminded myself, there's mothers all over the world feeling the same pain. And the word that I had for myself was, it's okay. I can't control this, but God's got it. Now, that's my mantra. I'm not saying it's going to be everyone's mantra, but please practice that exercise and repeat it throughout the day, and also repeat it when you're feeling good, because what you're actually doing is rewiring your brain to drive in more positive loaded thoughts. Now, I have developed a recovery wheel, and I'm in the process now of sort of putting it together for an online course for 2023. But over the years, working very closely with Deakin University and Community and Research Network, I've realised, wow, there's actual science behind things that keep us well. The first one is education. Learn more about mental health. Now, I run mental health first aid. Anyone can do that course. Not only, if you pay for it, do you get a free lunch. Well, you don't really, because you pay for it, so it's not really free lunch, is it? I was trying to give you a show back then. But you get to spend 2 days with me. Yay! You can also do that course online as well. So learn more about mental health, and if you'd like to, I'm happy for you to pass the email on, you know, if people want to find out more. The other thing is sleep. Work on sleep strategies. There's so many of them. Have a cell sing moment every day. That's gardening for some people. It's reading a book, but just do something that makes your cells happy. Practice stilling your mind, rewiring anxious thoughts. And there's so many exercises to do there. Diet is so important. They've proven food affects mood. Have solid, positive connections. Exercise was mentioned, and if that's too scary for you, try the NEAT approach, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Don't sit for too long. And hope. Lean into what you really believe about this world, because I think deep down inside, when we tap into that hope, you know, it sees a really positive journey for us all. So that is it from me until panel time. And look forward to your questions.
Jules, thank you. That was fantastic. And I could have kept listening. It was just that Philippa was giving me the eye about, no, I wanted to keep it on, no. But no, just refreshingly candid and on point. And I hope everybody has taken something away from your presentation. I certainly have. So thank you very much. Now, we have a token male here tonight. No, not at all token. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Councillor Peter Murrihy. Peter has had several years now as one of our local representatives. 2017, I think you threw your hand up to be a councillor, and as a past councillor, I thank you for that, because I know that it is a very challenging position, and thank you for your service as Mayor for the City of Greater Geelong. You have led with a steady hand, and I know have put Geelong at the foremost of all the decisions and the work you've done. So that's a little side point to thank you for that. Peter's here in a different capacity tonight, and that's as he was diagnosed with prostate cancer 3.5 years ago, and was given the all clear this year. Early detection was the key to his successful treatment and recovery, and with men less likely to visit the doctor when they experience symptoms, Councillor Murrihy encourages all men to bite the bullet, get a checkup. Could save your life. It's a great message. So I'd invite Peter to come forward and tell us a little bit about his experience. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. I'm a little nervous, I've got to say. The diagnosis was 3.5 years ago, and there was an article in the Addy front page, which I was shocked when I saw it myself, and because I wasn't expecting that. But this is the first time I've actually spoken about it, like in a forum like this. I've certainly spoken about it at home and with family and friends. And it wasn't real until I was sitting here, just in the last 3/4 of an hour. And I've got no notes because I don't think I need notes. So I don't think you need the clock. It's just I can see what's on the clock here. So, and I just want to start by just acknowledging the fact I have a brain and I'm a Collingwood supporter. And there's a little story to that, because I was mayor when the Geelong won the flag a few weeks ago, and there's only a small minority knew that I was a Collingwood supporter, and they were encouraging me to put the Geelong scarf around my neck during the parade And I did. I thought, well, I'm the mayor, I have to do this. But the messages I got from family and friends since, my 3 daughters still haven't spoken to me, but it was a great time to be mayor. So that finished last night. So I'm here tonight. So 3.5 years ago it was, and just to set the scene a little bit, I've always been sort of disciplined with my fitness. I try and eat and drink the right things, and I played local footy and cricket, and have been a sporting background, and so I've always been disciplined about keeping fit since you stop playing sport. Whether you walk or you run. Well, actually I can't run because I've had 2 hip replacements since. But so my diagnosis came out of the blue, and I was getting regular checks. Started when they suggest you should. I'm not sure what that age was, maybe 50. So I was getting the 12 monthly check, which I was petrified about the first time. And it's real. Like, I go into the doctor and I say, well, I'm at that age where I've got to have the prostate check, and of course drop the strides and bend over the bed. Well, I was as petrified as I'd ever been in my life, and anyway, so that was, the doctor's washing his hands, and I felt like I had to wash my hands as well. But so the 12 monthly checkups, and I think I had my last maybe in March, say 2018. The years are difficult to try and match them up. So March 2018, and then I went back. It was only about 2 weeks before Christmas 2018, and I said, look, I was there for something else actually, and I said, look, we'll do this now. So the test was done, the blood test next door, and I was, So then a couple of days later, I recognised the doctor's phone number come up on my phone. Being a family doctor and having 3 daughters, and over the years you recognise the number, so you ring it that often, 52215044. And he said, Peter, this is really high, this reading, the PSA reading. And he said, which is unusual because there's been no previous detection. And he said, look, you better go and have another test. So I did that, and I was in a council meeting 3 or 4 days before Christmas, and I recognised the phone number again, and it was the doctor, and he said, Peter, you better come and see me. And I said, okay. I said, should I pick up my wife and come in? He said, yep. So, I rang my wife on the way home. I said, be at the front. The doctor's rung. And you think the worst, and which is, I think, only natural. So he sat down because he had some readings, and he said, this is extremely high. We need a biopsy, of course. So this is 2 days before Christmas. He said, you won't be able to get in until the new year. So I said, well, tell me what you think. And he said, well, you've got prostate cancer. I'm 100% certain of it. So being a couple of days before Christmas, timing's not great. What did you get for Christmas? So I got prostate cancer. But it was, so 3 daughters, and, we're going down to my extended family for Christmas. Well, let's not tell anyone now, let's wait until, perhaps after the new year. And then new year, well, from Boxing Day onwards, we've got a place down the coast, very fortunate. So then, your daughters and friends arrive, and then there's New Year's Eve, and you still haven't told anyone. And then the following weekend is Pier to Pub, you still haven't told anyone. So and it was the worst time. It was the worst probably 3.5 weeks of my life at that time, because I'd make eye contact with my wife, and we're both thinking about the same thing at the same time. And it was really hard to try and enjoy everyone else's company, family and friends, and still have that unknown and try and be, in that festive time. So, and then you had to explain why you're coming back into Geelong on the 2nd of January, because that never happens. And so, biopsy, and then you go back down the coast, and then you get a call. You better see a urologist, ASAP. So that was arranged, and again, come back in, And I think you spoke about the number, once it's said to you you've got prostate cancer, and it's, I guess, official when the urologist's sitting there and he's got the computer up and he's pointing at different things and he's going through numbers. Well, it meant nothing to me, and it still doesn't actually. People say, "What was you reading?" I said, "I can't remember." You better speak to my wife. She remembers all that stuff. I got no idea what my numbers were, but they were extremely high. And he said, 2 options: surgery, ASAP, or chemo, I think it was. And and you say, well, you'd think you asked the right questions. I'm not sure if we ever did, but so anyway, it was surgery ASAP. So actually that's right. So we have to get back down the coast, and 3 daughters, and there was always boyfriends hanging around, and you're trying to get the 3 daughters by themselves to. And I said, look, can you send what's down the street or something like that? I just want to speak to the girls. And one of them popped, "Why, is something wrong? You sick?" And she saw the look on my face, and oh God, it was a tearful time, and I can say it now, and it was very, very emotional, and and it is for me now, because it's still it was like it was yesterday, and I'm nothing special, I'm a survivor. I've been through it, but I'm just trying to remember, the times that were specific, and so you tell your daughters, and they're emotional, and what happens now. Anyway, so and there was a sleep. It was very difficult at the time, and I remember getting a call from my doctor, and he said, "How are you sleeping?" And I said, "Well, not." And so he sent a script to the local chemist, and I was able to pick up a script and get some sleep, which I've never been short of being able to sleep. So at that time, it was just things going through your head, and I think you think the worst. I mean, you try and be positive about it, but you think the worst, and perhaps I was, but that was human nature, I think, for me at the time. But so, you have the surgery, and, and I think, let's just forget what sequence it was, but a few days later, the surgeon said, "No, look, we got it all." But he said, "I'm not sure about the cancer outside the prostate." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, we got the prostate, yeah, that's done, but there was cancer outside, so, had to go a bit wide with the surgery. So, he said, Peter, at this stage, we keep our fingers crossed that I got it all." So I remember leaving the surgery, and I burst into tears out the front of the surgery. And actually, I think I burst into tears 3 or 4 times over those 3 weeks. But that particular time, because he really worried me, because I thought, I've had the surgery, righto, no, let's get on with things. But he certainly put a stop to any thought I had that I was done and I was out, and let's get on with life, because he was quite genuine that he wasn't sure and he wasn't confident. So anyway, it was 3 months blood test, no, undetectable. Anyway, so finally, I've cut short a few things there, but and normally I think a patient, what he says, after 2 years, they're given the all clear, but he wouldn't do that with me until it was after 3 years. So it was March or April of this year where we went back, and waiting in one of those urologists' waiting rooms. And then I just glimpsed around the room. I think there's gentlemen who would have been there. They've still got Time magazines. Fishing angler, or I don't know, but that's in my mind, and you're waiting there, and you're not looking or discussing with anyone else in the waiting room, and you're thinking, well, I'm the youngest here, all these are old blokes. But you start to think, well, I'm a bit old myself now, so, but finally he said, look, you're right. He said, we'll do another check in 12 months' time, but he said, he won't be with me. He said, I'm retiring. So he said, I'm out the door in a few weeks' time, so best of luck. So I won't go back and see him again, but so look, that's my journey, but and I know I'll sit down and think of other things that perhaps I should have mentioned, but I think what comes back to me a lot is that, and it was the council group, and I still, one of those comments that annoys you and you can't, forget it. I explained that, oh, look, prostate, I've got to have surgery. And one of them said, oh, well, if you want to get any cancer, it's probably best to get prostate. And it's stuck in my mind. I'm thinking, how could you even say that? Like, it was beyond me at the time, and I think I gave just a stare, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, it was just the wrong thing to say to me. And then someone else, oh, my father-in-law had it, he's good now, so you'll be right. I think, I think they're meaning well comments, but well, you see, those two comments have stuck with me for the last 3 years, and so. But anyway, look, is my time up yet? So yeah, look, I'm a cancer survivor, and I don't think I've ever said that out aloud. But you often think of it, and it's always on your mind. People here that have been through it and are still living through it, and I don't think there's a day gone by. And you talk about thoughts. I don't know, because it's out there, it's everywhere, it's on the media, everything you see. Cancer, and you think, oh, myself, but it moves on. But it's still prevalent, and one of my daughters tonight, she said, "Oh, come along, Dad," and I said, "No," and she said, "Oh, why not?" I said, "Well, I think if my daughter was sitting in the front aisle, I would be bursting into tears. I think it's a lot easier when they're not here." But anyway, I'm a survivor, and I'm very thankful and very fortunate because since I was diagnosed, I've had some people who are not here now. And actually, he did say, he said, if you don't have this treated, you won't be here in 5 years' time. That's what he said to me. And so I'm 3.5 years into that, and I'm here, and I will be here for much longer. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. I think there's nothing like a personal account of how cancer affects people to really bring it home to you. And I thank you for your candour, and I thank you for going back to being a counsellor after dealing with all of this, because I'm no doubt there must have been times when I went, hang on, what do I want to be doing with my life? So I thank you for your dedication to service and also for your presentation tonight. Now, having regard to health issues, we're all going to stand up. We've got a couple of minutes to have a bit of a stand up and a stretch, and before we do our question and answer, so feel free just to have a bit of a stretch. I've also asked to remind you that the raffle tickets are still on sale, and I've got my money ready, so I'd certainly like some tickets, and if you've decided you would like some tickets, if you put up your hand, I'm sure the lovely Michelle will come over and relieve you of some cash. So just a couple of minutes of that. Just reminding you that the raffle prizes are a donation from the Community Care Chemist in Geelong West and West Coast Hair and Beauty Supplies. So $5 for one ticket, 3 for $10, and we'll draw the raffle at the end of the Q&A session. So just a minute or so, and then we'll resume. Think of some questions. Think of some really interesting questions for these wonderful people.
last Friday night, it was usually between 20 and 30, very bad out. And fellow service survived 20 plus years, very well run and intelligent place. And I found it really, and I got the, it would have been, someone told me that you were going to be at the job before it happened. Because I don't usually get the evidence because you're on the front page. So I would help us out, take it with me. I'm not an advocate, and I'm a semi-advocate. Approach to have cheap communication. No. Well, some of them think too, unless you say it's a blood test, it's a little bit of it. It's just so easy. Anyway, so I think I'm very, but I've got to work on it. I reckon you just start to tear up when you're doing it. Anyway, no, that's good. All right, terrific. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Can I ask you to resume your seats, please? Okay, so we now move on to the more laissez-faire part of the evening, which is questions from the floor for our participants. Now, you might have a question which is directed at one particular person, or you might have a more general question. And I guess I might kick it off with a question that's come from the floor, which is addressed at whoever would like to give it the response, or so it's not compulsory. But the question is, how can one manage their mental health?
Well, I think that... Oh, hang on. I'll just get ready for karaoke. I guess it's education's a really, really important part. You know, often people are stigmatised by getting a label, but it is a diagnosable illness that's treatable, that's actually really common, far more common than people realise. So I think once you understand what you're contending with, that opens the door for curiosity of all the different types of treatments. You know, if you look at psychologists alone, they have 150 techniques that they can pick. And we have a gamut of services sort of out there. Yes, it can be difficult in today's day and age to get to services quickly, but I think it's about understanding if you think you are experiencing an illness, say for like depression, there's 9 symptoms. You know, it doesn't take long to write down 9 symptoms, and being aware whether you're experiencing them over a period of time, you know, some of those symptoms, then you become curious, you know, because who doesn't want to, no one chooses to have a mental illness, should I say, and there's not always a cause, but definitely a treatment.
I'm not sure what to do with the microphone. We could bring it down or... Pop it down. How does it work? You hold it. Oh, thank you. I think we look and try to assess right from the start how patients are coping and looking at their levels of distress. But we do encourage, often it takes a lot of encouragement for a patient to agree to a referral to see a psychologist. Often they're happy talking to just their nurse specialist, but we do encourage that we do have the psychology team that they can speak to and just to discuss things. But often people will say, I think with the stigma, oh no, I'm right, there's other people who need their assistance more than I do. But often it is, I've found over the years, it's at the end of treatment or coming up to the 12 months. For, you know, breast cancer patients, it might be they've got to go and have their surveillance mammogram, and it brings it all back, and it is a form of post-traumatic stress. No, they haven't been anywhere near a war zone, but they've gone through something major in their life, which at the start, as Peter was saying, you've got your diagnosis, and then apart from Christmas and New Year holding things up, it's often bang, 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 and then you're in treatment, and you're in this treatment cycle that might go for 12 months or more, and then it's finished. And that's when a lot of patients have had a bit of a breakdown and needing assistance then. But we try and pick up along the way, because we'll be seeing them at different appointments and how they're going, and it might be halfway through treatment. Just see the psychologist and go through all of this that happens so quickly, this life-changing diagnosis.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just following on from that, Sue, do you think it's important for people, how important is it for people with a cancer diagnosis to connect with others who are in the same situation, whether that be a support group, or informal or formal? How would they do that, and would that be recommended?
Yeah, look, in a way, so support groups are still going, but we aren't having groups meeting at the hospital due to COVID. But they had gone out of vogue a bit with more resources, more information available on websites, say the Breast Cancer Network, Cancer Council Victoria, just as 2 websites, that there's more accessible information. I think when support groups started originally, you couldn't access as much information the internet and all those things weren't around originally, but we've got so much. In a way, there's too much information out there. I often say to patients when they're first diagnosed, don't go Googling. Look at our main cancer sites, but don't go Googling, because you will see an amazing amount of wrong information out there, and there's a lot of chat rooms and things like that that can really lead people astray, so being careful. But often our younger patients will be keen on a young women's support group that they've online, but I think it's important to keep with a support group that, like Cancer Council Victoria, is behind. And so we have our Grace group in Geelong and Barwon Head's breast cancer group in Geelong. I know we've got a very active prostate cancer support group as well in Geelong. So I think staying with those ones, but just being careful with the internet.
Peter?
Look, I was just going to talking about it. It's so you have to do something. I think you can sit at home and wonder, but you've got to reach out. And I'm a part of a support group called the Man's Walk, and it's Philippa Caesar's most Saturday mornings down at Eastern Beach and Bernadette. You're too early for us down there. But I wasn't thinking of myself that I needed some support. I thought I could go along and help others, but it's probably done more for me than me doing anything for others. So the Man's Walk, we walk for an hour, have a coffee every Saturday morning, and it's about walk, talk, support. And we've even sort of from there formed another sort of support group called Right Mate, and that reaches, it's not just cancer, it's all sort of mental illness areas, but been very beneficial for myself.
Peter, just leading on from that, what did you learn about yourself out of this experience of having cancer? Was there something you discovered about yourself that you didn't know before?
Don't suffer the small stuff.
Okay.
Oh, wow. And that Christmas. So we've gone home and there was no issues, but there was, different things over that couple of days, and I'm thinking, don't worry about it. Like, as if that's, a problem. I'll tell you a problem, but I couldn't. But, and like, I'm fit and healthy now, and I'm living and squeezing as much into every day as I can. So, I guess I'm lucky. I'm positive about, what I've got.
Yeah. I don't want to bag all the questions. Some questions here, yes.
Yes, my question is directed at Sue, and thank you very much for acknowledging Grace and such a wonderful program tonight for women with breast cancer. But I want your thoughts on, Sue, about sugar. There seems to be, no, you're not supposed to have sugar because the sugar can do some damage. I just want your thoughts on it, because it's very important that we know this as we go through our cancer journey. And,
Look, there's some information out there that you'll hear, and the sugar one, I'm glad you brought it up, Michelle. It is one we do hear. And I think too, when people are having scans, certainly the PET scan that some people might have heard about that patients might need if we're looking for more advanced cancer, we're looking for activity and where the body's using sugar, and is that, cancer has moved, for example. I think a healthy, well-balanced diet is really important, and I know a few years ago there was like the green smoothies was a big thing, say 10 years ago, and everyone was using these NutriBullets and putting everything in, and we hadn't heard of kale, and next thing it was in everything. And people were, and then dietitians were coming out and saying, actually, these smoothies, if you're just living on that, it's not good for the rest of your gastrointestinal system. So it's a balanced diet. It's not taking dairy out, it's not taking meat out, it's not taking sugar out, but just having a healthy diet. We all need some sugar. If we're not having actual sugar itself, the body will make that out through, changing carbohydrate or the protein chain or something, because we still need energy. The cells need energy to be able to, our healthy cells to be able to perform and divide. So we just need a healthy, well-balanced diet, not adding in too much processed sugar and, you know, eating a bag of lollies and all those sorts of things, but just a normal diet. But looking at, you know, what the dietitians would discuss about the healthy eating, but making sure we're not leaving things out.
There's also, in relation to mental health, the Deakin University Food and Mood Centre. If you Google them, is a very reputable site, and you can actually do some of their courses. But they have proven that, and they believe microgut bacteria does affect your levels of anxiety and depression, because Mediterranean people have the lowest levels of depression and anxiety in the world, and they attribute it to their diet.
Oh, there's another hand up here.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how your wife, how she coped with the diagnosis and what support she found helpful. Like, you've now got your walking group.
Well, for a start, she was my strength. Yeah, she was my rock. Because we just, the two of us knew for, you know, a month before, 3.5 weeks before telling anyone. So she's been incredible, and ever since. Like, but she hasn't sought any support. I think she's certainly been guided by me. Like, and look, I've been fine. You know, emotionally, I'm, you know, not so much a couple of times, but strength-wise, since. Actually, I did have a few issues. I had to go back into hospital after. I was thinking of things now. Look, she's been the strength right through, and, you know, I gained the strength from her. But she hasn't had any support as such. Yeah. I should ask her that, shouldn't I? Well, I said tonight, did you want to come along? So, and she said, no, I think you're right. So thank goodness she didn't.
She's watching some chick flick, probably.
Jules, that might be a nice one for you to lead on from too, which is family and friends being affected, and you know what sometimes their own anxieties can be projected onto the person with cancer. So how should they manage their own mental health after a friend or family member is diagnosed?
The good news, I guess, is that if you look at the research around trauma, and having a diagnosis like cancer is obviously very traumatic. But the good news around trauma is that most people move through the phases. So there might be, you know, the grief and the anger and the depression, but most people will process it. The risk is actually, as Sue was saying before, the post-traumatic stress disorder. And what that is, it's when a person has a memory that hasn't been processed, particularly through REM sleep, because that's where we process memories. So if anything reminds you of the trauma, and we have 5 senses, you can be, I guess, emotionally charged, and you can have physiological feelings and emotions, a bit like, you know, when the doctor gives you that diagnosis and that, you know, shock feeling. So now, a carer is not immune to that as well, because their thought processes have been going through the same journey, you know, with loved ones. So I think it's really important to also encourage carers, you know, to seek any sort of mental health support. And I know that Barwon Carers has the support workers that are out there for a number of different reasons as well, and you might know more about that, sort of, Sue, from your side.
Oh, there is like the Carers Gateway and that, but I suppose a lot of our patients and their families haven't had to access that, but just I know with getting to know patients and, you know, their loved ones, coming to appointments with them, and you get to know them over time. And often it might be a husband, you know, talking to the side saying, I need some extra help, or I'm not coping with this, or it might come from the patient themselves. So it's discussing with them and then helping them, whether referral to a psychologist or seeing the social worker, or just seeing what help they can access but they've got to be ready for it too. And often if the patient's doing well and they're doing well and can see it, they're fine. It's just we're all different on what we need at what time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question, yeah. Thanks, Bernadette.
I just wanted to, I'm not sure who to direct this question to, but as you're all talking, I was thinking about a personal situation with my own brother who passed away from a brain tumour. And it's around the issue of hope and reality. And I've seen many people who have passed away from cancer who had a lot of hope, some who were more realistic about their diagnosis and others who hung on to hope. My brother was told by his specialist that he thought he was going to use one of his 1%ers, the 1% that had this particular cancer that survived. Well, that didn't happen. It was very aggressive. And consequently, I guess as a family member, I knew that it was a very aggressive cancer. I didn't really feel that, but I think everybody in the family kind of just said, well, you know, we sort of went along with this hope theory that, you know, he was going to survive. And so I guess as a family, you know, how do you sort of deal with those sorts of situations? And so I'm sort of looking at Sue because you probably you're working with a lot of those families. That's a very difficult situation because in some ways we sort of felt a little bit robbed of time because when it did come, it was very fast and it was sick, and then there wasn't that time to sort of spend in the moment. So
And definitely with the brain tumour, and they would he was given that 1% chance. It was you know, from our side it was looking slim. To survive it, definitely, yeah. But I think hope is important, and patients need hope and family need hope to be able to keep going. But often when a cancer isn't doing well and it is aggressive and becomes terminal, that no one is prepared, I think, as a family member, of how quickly things can change, and that last 2 weeks can be a shock to everyone, even though, say for patients of mine who've become, you know, terminal, we know it'll happen at some stage and they're making treatment decisions or not continuing with treatment. But the change over that next couple of weeks can be frightening and terrifying, how quickly it happens, and family are not prepared. It is a really, and you've got grief building, and obviously you're still feeling that time you've missed. It is whether grief counselling helps, but to get through that as a family, that sometimes can be something to access. But I certainly understand what you're saying. You feel robbed of that time because the hope was he would be in that 1%.
I guess it's just that balance between how do you kind of manage the situation at the time. The patient is kind of feeling, well, this is a lot of hope and I'm going to survive, so I'll leave it.
I think supporting the patient is very important, and for them to have that hope is very important for them to keep going forward. I've also had patients say, if one more person tells me to be positive, I'm being positive, but this is really hard. And often, you know, you'll see someone in the street or when they've heard what's a patient's dealing with their treatment, and they say, well, you be positive, and they feel they've done the right thing by saying that. But I think hope, we all need to have hope to get through everything, and supporting the patient, because you can't, and a lot of times I too think oncologists don't want to give that blanket, this isn't going to be a good outcome, this is very aggressive, and we've only got a certain amount of time, because they can't tell how much time it'll be. It can change too, but it's to take hope away from a patient. It takes their reason to get out of bed the next day away as well. But for the family, it's so hard. Yeah.
Thanks, Sue. Time is really flying. What a great lot of panellists we've got here. So I'd like to invite the chair of the Geelong Region Cancerians, Philippa Challis, OAM, to come up and thank you all, please, on our behalf.
How blessed are we to have heard from these people, Sue Bowles, Jules Haddock and Peter Murrihy, whose comments could well be the catalyst for a cancer sufferer, their family or friends, in being able to cope with the situation they find themselves in after receiving a life-altering diagnosis. Maureen, as you've been instrumental in liaising with the panellists for this event, and thank you for organising good speakers, please come and assist me as we thank our speakers for being with us this evening and giving so freely of their time. So in a moment, if you could join me in thanking our panellists and our MC, our moderator of this evening, Geelong-based barrister Allana Goldsworthy, for the excellent job she's done tonight. Before handing you back to Allana for the drawing of the raffle and bringing to a close our informative and interesting panel discussion, I have an announcement. When the Geelong Region Cancerians was formed in 2018, the intention was to run for 3 years to raise funds for research into all cancers, with monies being donated to the Australian Cancer Research Foundation. Helene Bender, as AM, as the inaugural chair, led the committee to a stellar amount being raised, for which our public would like to thank her. It enabled me to achieve my personal wish as a uterine cancer survivor to give back to the community. Over the last 2 years, holding functions and continuing to raise monies at the level previously attained has been a challenge. No events are on the Geelong Region Cancerians calendar at this stage, pending the appointment of a new chair and additional committee members. The Geelong Region Cancerians are a committee under the Australian Cancer Research Foundation. Therefore, it will continue, and expressions of interest may be directed to Victoria Bonsey via the ACRF. There will be events such as the Geelong Art Show occurring in August next year, which will be run by a special committee, and the Geelong Region Cancerians collection canisters will still be visible at different locations. I'd encourage you, therefore, to go on the database of the Geelong Region Cancerians if you're not already on it, and be involved with supporting our aim. Working together, we can help beat cancer. Thank you.
Just before Philippa heads downstairs, I'd invite Victoria Bonsey, who is the philanthropy manager for the Australian Cancer Research Foundation, to come forward.
Thank you, Philippa. Just one for the photographer, who's over there. So that's your certificate.
Thank you.
Appreciation. And these are your flowers.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you. So you're looking at them? Thank you. They're for you.
Thank you.
You get to keep those.
Thank you.
And I am going to say a few words. And I know Philippa's told me to be brief. I'll try. But there's so much to say about this amazing woman who certainly is an exemplary example of how you can succeed and excel beyond your cancer diagnosis. So as we all know, Philippa is a survivor of uterine cancer, and she was not content to just sit on her laurels and be thankful for her good health. She chose to give back to the community And what a wonderful community you are. I can quite understand why she'd want to help the Geelong community and also all of Australia. She's a passionate Australian and a wonderful person. So on behalf of the Australian Cancer Research Foundation, we formally thank and acknowledge Philippa for her role in being a founder and current chair of the Geelong Region Cancerians. And I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Helene Bender for her work, for Michelle Challis, who has been a rock, for all the committee members over the years since 2018. We do hope we can continue with this marvellous group, and I would encourage anyone to get in touch with me. My business cards are on the table at the door. Just grab one and send me an email if you have any questions or have any interest in supporting this group into the future. Obviously, we are raising funds for all cancers, and we're very proud of Philippa for what she's done to raise awareness for uterine cancer in particular. But as you can tell from the panel, cancer touches indiscriminately. There's hundreds of different types of cancers. Sue alluded to this earlier. Each cancer can have different strains that all behave differently in different people's bodies. And it's thanks to research in the past, and that is continuing, that we are able to deliver precision medicine, personalised precision medicine. And we need to continue the fundraising so that we can treat and help benefit future patients for cancer of the many different types that exist in our community today. So thank you to the wonderful panellists, Peter, Jules, Sue. You were really, really interesting. It was an honour to listen to you. Thank you, Allana. I'm surprised you didn't say, did you want to approach the bench or anything, but no, you did fantastically. And if you have any questions about what we do with cancer research, please let me know. Thank you very much indeed.